right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Getting to Know iPhones and iPads, which is part of our Getting Started with Tech series here at the Champaign Public Library. My name is Jordan Neal, and I am the career librarian here at the library, so thank you all for joining us. If you are new to Zoom or just need a refresher, we'll discuss where things are located, and then we'll talk about options on how to interact with us during the webinar. For Zoom, there are some buttons or icons at the bottom of your screen. On the left, you'll have the options that control your sound or your speaker. Then in the middle, you'll have a couple of other buttons that will control what you can do during this webinar. Don't worry about seeing your video. The only videos that could be seen are mine and the instructor's video. So back to the buttons, you'll see three. The first one is chat, which looks like a little comment bubble, and you're welcome to use that chat to ask any questions for our instructor, and we will relay the questions to her verbally. You can also ask us to repeat any demos, ask any questions, or just generally converse with us if you're interested. We also have a raised hand button or option. We can use this to unmute you so you can speak and ask your question out loud if you'd prefer. You know, we understand that typing out a question might not be as easy as speaking, so that's another option for you. Throughout the webinar, we will be pausing for questions, but you can ask us at any time in the chat and or by raising your hand. So you don't have to wait till the end to ask us those questions. And sometimes it helps us to have those questions as we go along for learning for all of us. Live transcriptions are enabled, so you'll see them at the bottom of the screen here. There's a little CC button, and if you would like the transcriptions to show up, you can click on that. If you'd like to hide the transcriptions, all you have to do is tap on the live transcription button and then I think select hide subtitles so you don't have to see it. I'll go ahead and put a link to the handout that our instructor will be presenting in the chat at this time. So you can use that if you want to follow along. Let me put this in the chat before I forget so everyone can see it. There we go. So you can click on that link to access the presentation. After this webinar, we'll also send out an email that would include a copy of the handout and a link to the video, which will also be on the library's YouTube channel. If you wanted to come in person into the library, we could also have a printed copy available for you to pick up, or you could pick it up through curbside services. So that's everything that I have for now. So I'll go ahead and introduce our wonderful instructor, Rebecca Van Dusen, who will be leading us today when it comes to getting to know our iPhones and iPads. So with that, Rebecca, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jordan, for the lovely introduction. Welcome everybody to today's class, iPhones and iPads. Now, if you don't have an iPhone or an iPad, that's okay. You can kind of sit back and watch. I know a lot of people take these kind of classes. Maybe they're thinking about getting one in the future and they just want to see what it's all about. That's perfectly fine as well. We welcome everybody. And our class is an intro class, so it is more geared towards learning some of the basics, but we do have people that are more advanced attend as well, so don't feel like you're fish out of water or anything. And I will go ahead and share my PowerPoint presentation. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I hope you're seeing my screen there, Jordan, with the presentation.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get started. What are we going to talk about today for our agenda? We are going to talk about the different buttons on the iPhone and iPad because there are still a few buttons. I know they have been getting rid of a lot, but there are still some. We'll talk about how to navigate the home screen. We're going to cover some settings as well. We're going to talk about the task manager. We're also going to talk about apps, how to open apps, install apps, delete apps. And we're also going to talk about what is new with the newest iOS. So iOS is what Apple calls their operating system. OS stands for operating system. And then that I is just something that they use a lot with their computers and with their devices. And 14 is the most recent operating system. So we'll talk about some of the newest stuff they've added. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So there are a few different models of iPad. There's the regular iPad, there's the iPad Pro, there's the iPad Air, and there's also the iPad Mini. So they all have a different kind of setup. With the Mini, it's a smaller iPad, and then the other iPads are more of the regular size iPad. The Pro is a little bit more versed for doing stuff that takes more processing power, so it can do more stuff on, say, like a Photoshop app. And some of them have different storage capacities, and the setup is a little different with some of the buttons. Some have a home button, some don't have a home button. It just depends on which model. And if you have more of an advanced question about models, we can talk about that too, if you're interested. iPhones are also different, so I know that everybody has probably a different one depending on when you got it. So I personally have an iPhone 11. I have it right here, and we'll do some demos of the iPhone and the iPad as well. We have an iPad Pro and an iPad Air here at the library. We also circulate iPads at the library. I should say that too. If you want to try out an iPad, you can check one out from us at the information desk on the second floor, and you can take it home, play with it, figure out if that's what you like to, if that's what you want to buy, or you can use any app on there that we have. Just had to throw that out there. That's one of the newer things we've got circulating. So the iPhones, you might have an iPhone that's older. So the iPhone that's older, it would be like the 4 or 5 or the 6, 7, and 8. And then it kind of stretched into the new iPhones that don't have a home button. So the iPhone 10, 11, and 12, those are a little bit different because they're the newer models. But I still find sometimes that people have those older models. So it helps to know kind of what you have. So let's talk about the buttons. So let's go ahead and I'm going to jump into my I have a little camera that can show buttons. Let me exit out of my screen share here and start my video. Okay, let me see if I can zoom out a little bit here. Bear with me while I get this all zoomed out. Okay, so this is our iPad here that we use for programming. And then I have my iPhone. That's my cat. And I have an iPhone 11. So let me show you the buttons. So each iPad, again, is a little bit different. Let me pull up my PowerPoint on the side here so I can follow along. So you'll notice that on the iPad, if I kind of turn it on its side, I hope you can see some of those buttons up there. So there's usually 2 buttons that are on the side of an iPhone and an iPad. Those are going to be your volume buttons. I also have a button on the very top. Let me see if I can focus that. It's a little hard to see, but I have a button right here. That's my top button. Now your iPad may have a top button, your iPhone may have a top button, or it may have a side button. Let me show you my iPhone. So my iPhone has a side button instead of a top button, and it also has 2 volume buttons, so a volume up and a volume down. And then it's also got a button that I can toggle on and off, and that will allow me to turn my phone on silent or like put it on vibrate, depending on how I have it set up. And you'll notice my iPhone doesn't have a home button. It just is a solid screen, and we'll talk more about that in a second. Let me turn off the overhead lights as well. That might give us a little bit of better view when we get onto some of the screen stuff. So I'll be right back in just a second. Okay. And again, sometimes the side button can do different things than a top button. Like for instance, on my iPhone, if I'm downloading an app, sometimes it'll prompt me to touch that side button so that I can download it. Or if I'm doing something like Apple Pay, it might have me press that side button. And this can also be used to turn it off or on. So for instance, my phone was asleep and I press that button and I can turn that screen off or turn it on. So right now my phone is it's just going to sleep. It's not really turning off, but there is a way to turn it completely off. And we can talk about that later. I won't really cover that during the webinar, but if you're interested, we can talk about how to do that. Does anybody have any questions about the iPhone buttons or the iPad buttons?
No questions at this point that I can see, Rebecca.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's just jump right into the next kind of thing here. I'm going to turn this off, and then we're going to turn it back on and talk about how to unlock your device. So most iPads and iPhones come with the ability to set up a passcode. So a passcode will allow you to kind of have an extra security measure so that no one can just kind of get into your device. And usually people will set up a passcode as it will be either a code. So it could be like a 4-digit code. Sometimes you can even get into, I think, a 10-digit code. It's higher than 4, I know. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But some iPads also have fingerprint recognition, so you can have your fingerprint open your iPhone or iPad. And some also have face recognition. So that means it will detect your face as you look at your phone and unlock it. And that's just another kind of security measure. Now, you don't have to have it on your device, but for the most part, it will ask you to do that when you set up your device. You can always turn it off later. And for us on the iPad here, we have a passcode set up. So let me enter that. So again, that's going to be kind of the first thing you see when you get into your device. And on my iPhone, let me pull that up. My iPhone here, let me put it down. I think it's detecting my face. Let me see. Yes, it is. Up at the top, it's kind of hard to see, but up at the top, let me see if I can change the lighting here. There is a little lock button. Let me see. It's kind of hard to tell. Yeah, here we go. Sometimes it's hard with this camera to switch around, but you can kind of see up at the top, there's a lock button. There's a lock icon right above the time. It's hard to see on this, but that's kind of telling me that my phone is locked. And then if I look at it, now it's unlocked. Come on. There we go. And then I just swiped up. Now, since mine doesn't have a home button, it's a little different. I'm going to turn on this other light too and see if I can make it a little bit ambient light in here. Bear with me. There we go. So again, once you unlock your device, you're going to go to your home screen. And let's talk about our iPad home button as well. So our iPad does have a home button. Let me see if you can see it there on the side. So you can kind of see our home button there. I'm kind of getting the reflection off the light, but that's our home button. It does have a fingerprint ability, so you can use your fingerprint to open it, but we don't have that currently set up. So for us, we just use the passcode to enter, and that's that 4-digit number. And then your home button actually does quite a few things. So if you have a device with a home button, your home button can bring you to your home screen, again, like we talked. It can also open up Task Manager. We'll talk a little bit more about Task Manager in a minute, but that's another thing you can do with your home button. And you can also activate Siri. I'm sure that a lot of people have heard of Siri before. It's a virtual assistant, kind of like Google Assistant, where you can ask it questions, you can have it search stuff for you. It's just another feature for iPhones and iPads. And we can talk about Siri more if you want to, but I'm not going to cover that really today. And again, with iPhones, depending on your model, you might have a home button, you might not. For us, I don't have one on my iPhone 11, but if you have a phone that's older than an iPhone 10, it usually does have a home button. I will stop there for questions unless, if anybody has a question, or unless I can demonstrate something again or show buttons again.
No questions right now. And again, you can type your question into the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak, but no questions at this time.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the home screen. Let me get back on my iPad. So the home screen is going to be that screen that you get to once you open your device, and that's going to have all the apps that you have on it. So for us, we have all of our apps here, and we also have this down here. Let me get my pen. So we have what is called a dock, D-O-C-K. And your dock is going to be where you can access apps that you frequently use. So for instance, maybe you have your camera app down here that you use pretty often. For us, we have our mail app, and then there's another files app. Now this can be changed as well. So the cool thing about the dock is that you can put things on it and take things off of it. And no matter what home screen you're on, so if I'm swiping through my home screens, that dock down here at the bottom is staying the same. So you'll notice as I'm swiping through, and again, we can always move stuff onto the dock as well. We're going to talk more about how to do that when we talk about moving apps, but just know that your home screen and the dock are completely customizable. So the way that it looks now doesn't necessarily have to be the way that it can be in the future. You can move apps around, you can delete apps, you can move apps to a different screen, you can even create more screens depending on if you have more apps. So you'll also notice down here right above the dock, there's two little dots. So depending on your device, you may have more or less depending on how many home screens you have. So for us, we only have two, so there's two dots. And you'll kind of notice that as I scroll between two of these, that it switches the dot. It's kind of hard to see just the way the lighting is, but the dot that is the most highlighted one, that's the screen that you're currently on. So again, you just swipe left or right to switch between those home screens. There's also a way to view some of the notifications that you have on your phone. So sometimes you may have a lot of apps that have a lot of notifications and you want to see them all in one place. There is a way to do that. So if you are on an iPad, you can swipe from the top and you'll kind of, let's see if it will do it for me. Top middle. Now I don't have any notifications on here. Let me see if I have any on my phone. I don't have any on my phone either, so I'm not going to show that. It's basically the same screen. If you have any text message notifications, any phone notifications, some apps, you can put notifications on your notification screen. So that's kind of a good way to consolidate all the notifications on one screen. So again, you're just going to swipe from the very, very top, swipe down from your home screen. And you might also notice that apps have a little red dot. So for instance, our settings app up here has a little red dot in the corner. Let me see if any other apps, let's see. So it looks like we have notifications on Instagram and on Twitter. So those little red dots with numbers are just an indication to you that you have notifications on that app. So for instance, if maybe you're on your phone and you have a notification, you'll have a little red dot. So for me, I have a notification on my phone app and it looks like I have some mail that is unread. I'm pretty bad about deleting that. So I have 1,785 notifications on my mail app. And that's just kind of iPhone's way of telling you, hey, you have something that you might need to look at on your app. And again, it's easy to take things off of your notifications. So you can get into that through your settings. And we'll talk more about that when we get to settings. But there is a way to customize the way your notifications look. Any questions so far?
No questions.
Okay. So speaking of settings, let's go ahead and jump right into settings because there is so much that you can do with settings. So for us, our settings is on the home screen. It looks like a little gear right here and it says settings underneath. And to open it, I'll just tap on the settings. And then for me, it's going to look like this because I'm on an iPad. It might look slightly different if you're on an iPhone. Let me open up my iPhone settings. Now I have dark mode on my iPhone. I like dark mode because it's not so harsh. Let me see if I can autofocus. Let me see if I can make that a little darker. So for me on my iPhone, it looks a little different just because the screen's not as big and it's got the dark mode on it. But let's go through some settings that you might want to go through if you're getting started with iPad or with iPhone. I'm going to stay on my iPad just because it's kind of easier to look at. But the first thing we're going to cover is how to connect to Wi-Fi. So that's probably one of the most important things with iPhones and iPads is making sure that you're connected to the internet, right? So for us, if we're in our settings, you'll notice on the left side here, there's something that says Wi-Fi. So that's where we can connect to a wireless internet network. So if I tap on Wi-Fi, it's going to open up another page where then I can either turn my Wi-Fi on or off. So I have a button here that will let me turn it off or turn it back on. And then it's going to list other networks here. So it should pop up with Champaign Public Library. I think we're already connected, so it's not popping up. Let me close out of it and go back into it. Yes, there we go. So for us, it says Champaign Public Library, and we've joined that network. Now, if you were someplace that was outside of the library, or maybe you're in like Starbucks or something like that, there's usually a Wi-Fi network that you can connect to, and they'll usually list other networks that are close by. So also, I know for my apartment building, there's a lot of other networks that pull up just because there's other people living close by and they have their own Wi-Fi networks. So yours, again, it might look different than mine depending on where you are, because of course I'm at the library, you may not be at the library, you might be at home. So you may have a different list of networks. And to connect to a network, you basically just tap on that network. So for us, we're already joined. So if I tap on it, it's just going to give me more information about the network. And I've got auto join on just because that way it's easier for me. I'm always at the library and I can auto join. So then when I come into the library, it joins automatically. I don't have to go into my Wi-Fi settings every single time. So that's useful if you're at home as well. You can click auto join for your personal Wi-Fi. That way you don't have to worry about connecting to it every single time you're at home. And sometimes other networks will come up, and I will always say make sure you're careful about what networks you're joining. If you're in a public space, you know, anybody can be on that network. Just be careful. There are security issues surrounding what kind of networks you join. And we can talk about that later too, but just be aware if you join a network, you know, it may be open to anybody. Let's also talk about Bluetooth. Bluetooth is another pretty recent addition to some of the connections in settings. So you may have heard of Bluetooth. A lot of cars have it. Like for instance, you may be able to connect your phone to your car via Bluetooth, and that way you can listen to music or audiobooks or podcasts through your phone, and it will go through your car's speakers via Bluetooth. A lot of people also use Bluetooth for wireless speakers or headphones, or even computer mice and keyboards can connect via Bluetooth. It's a super useful thing. So for us, we have our Bluetooth toggled on, but you can turn it off as well. But let's turn it back on. And then it's going to show you what devices that you're able to connect to. So we have this JBL Flip 4. That's a speaker. So if I were to tap on this, then I could connect to the speaker. I'm not quite sure what these other devices are. Again, it's going to list any device that's in your area that might be able to connect to Bluetooth. So you'll see someone named Alan is probably in the library and he has his iPad. So I'm not going to connect to that because I don't want to connect to Alan's iPad. But if I did want to connect to this JBL Flip, I could tap on there. Now, I don't think I have it here. Let me check. I'm just going to check in these. Nope, I don't have it up here. I think it may be in the other room, but another thing to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that whatever you're trying to connect to can connect. So sometimes you have to turn it on to discoverable. So it says here, make sure JBL Flip is turned on and in range. It also will only have a certain range. So you may not be able to, like if you're downstairs and your speaker is upstairs, you may not be able to connect to it because it may just be too far away. So that's a possibility as well. Now, usually if I'm not connecting to Bluetooth or I'm not looking for something, I will turn Bluetooth off because sometimes it will take up some of the battery on my device. So I'm just going to turn it off because I'm not trying to connect to anything. Okay. There is also a quick way to jump into some of these settings right from the home screen without jumping into the settings app. And it's called the Control Center. So on my iPad, let me see if I can make this a little darker. If I'm on my iPad and I swipe down right underneath where the battery is, I swipe down like that, then I get some controls here. And you'll notice some of those icons up here in the corner. So I have my Wi-Fi icon that kind of looks like a little fan, that it's like almost like a radar kind of looking fan. That's my Wi-Fi icon. I also have a Bluetooth icon right next to it. So if I wanted to connect to something or I wanted to turn it on, I could just tap it right from there. I can also long tap on it and it will give me a little more information, like we're connected to Champaign Public Library and my Bluetooth is on, or I can turn it off. And it's really super quick and easy to tap on and off. And that way you don't have to jump into your settings and go down a huge list. You can kind of just swipe it and I've got it turned on and I'm good to go. You can also do a couple of other things from this. You can switch your brightness. So my screen brightness, I can go up and down by swiping that. I can change my volume by swiping up and down. I can even get into things like my camera, my flashlight. I have a timer here. This is a recording. So if I wanted to record my screen, and I think this is notifications. I'm not quite sure what that one is. But these can also be changed as well. So you can customize the buttons on your control center through your settings. So if I go back to my settings and I go down here to control center, and then, okay, it looks like that was silent mode. So these are the ones that I have currently on, but I can also add more. So maybe I wanted to turn on a stopwatch. I wanted to add a stopwatch to my control center, or I wanted to add notes. Let's do that. And then let's go back to my control center. And now you can see I have a stopwatch on there and I have notes now. So that's a really useful way, and it's quick and easy, kind of like a quick access menu, just to jump into some stuff really quick. I use it pretty often for my flashlight because I don't think there is a dedicated flashlight button that lives outside of your control center. I could be wrong. Let's go back into settings. And there is a way to change your brightness from your settings as well. So if I were to go to display and brightness, then I could toggle this or slide that. I could also change between light and dark mode. I touched on dark mode when I showed my phone, but that would let me change it to dark mode so that it's not white, it's black. And that's helpful if you have issues with looking at a white screen. I know for me, it helps my eyes. I like to have it on dark mode for that reason. So again,
Rebecca,
control center, go ahead.
we have a couple of questions, Rebecca, if you don't mind.
Yes, I don't mind at all.
The first one is I got a new iPad. Should I sync to my old iPad to transfer the information?
I guess that would be, I would say that's kind of your personal decision. Some people like to have their old stuff transferred. I know I do. Whenever I get a new device, I like to make sure that I have my backup transferred onto my new device, just so it saves all the apps that I have and it saves my information, and it may be transferring pictures over. And that way you don't have two devices that are different. But it depends on you. You may want to have a new device that's different from your old device. It just depends on what you like personally.
And their second question is, what is the half moon sign? I think this may have been when you were in settings.
I think here, I think this is a do not disturb thing. Yes. So a do not disturb would be like, for instance, if you don't want to receive phone calls during certain hours or after certain hours, people may turn that do not disturb on so that they don't receive notifications or phone calls or texts. And usually if you click on it, I think if you long hold on something, then you have more options. I would recommend kind of just, if you're not sure of what it is, try to tap on it and see what happens. You're really not going to do much to it except for open maybe a new window or something. But that's what I like to do. If I'm not sure, okay, I'll just click on it and let's see what it says. So it looks like for that one, it's do not disturb.
They say thank you. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I think we covered everything with settings. Let me go back to settings and see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. We did touch on Siri very, very slightly. Siri is also enabled through your settings. So for us, we can press our home button for Siri, or we can switch it so that if I say, hey Siri, it will pull up Siri. So let's actually do that. Let's do our home button. Hey Siri, what is the weather? So now it's given our weather there. So Siri is kind of useful if you like that kind of virtual assistant thing. Some people don't. I use my Google Assistant pretty often for, I mostly just use it to find out what the weather is. And you can change some other settings in here. Like you can get into your Touch ID and your passcode. So for us, we can change that if we wanted to add our fingerprint or if we wanted to change our passcode. We can also change some general settings. For instance, we can get into our software updates here. We can look what our model is for our iPad. I recommend, I mean, settings is so big and there's just so much in there. I really recommend taking some time and going through settings and just opening menus and seeing what kind of stuff is in each menu. Now, of course, I can't cover everything in settings today, but I recommend taking some time of your own and just clicking, okay, what if I click that? Then what kind of settings do I have going in Safari, for instance? Any questions about settings so far? I'm happy to show something over again too.
No questions right now.
Let's also talk about notifications because I did say we were going to talk about that for a second. So notification settings, again, are those notifications that come through on your notification screen or through your, like you may get text messages and they may pop up on your screen or when they come in. So for us, we have, let's see if we can go into messages. So for us, if we get a message, it's going to show up on the lock screen. It's going to show up in our notification center, and it's going to show up as a banner on the top of our screen. So you may notice sometimes when you're getting a text message that that banner comes through on the top up here at the top of the screen, and it says like text message from Bob or something like that. And you can change that. So for us, we want notifications on for messages. Now, again, it's up to you what you want to get notifications for. And you don't have to have them on for certain things. You can always turn them off. Especially with some apps. Some apps may ask you, do you want notifications? And you can say yes or no, depending on if you want to receive them. Okay. I will go ahead and move on to how to manage your apps unless anybody has any other questions.
I don't see any right now.
Okay. So let's talk about apps. So the most simple way to do things on your iPad is just to open up apps and use them. So if you want to open an app, you just tap on the app's icon. So let's open up Libby. I'm just going to tap on the icon and it's going to open up the app. And Libby is an app that we have through the library to read ebooks and listen to audiobooks. We also have magazines on here too. So you'll see we have National Geographic checked out. But again, you'll just tap on an app and it will open it. We also have Canopy. Let's open Canopy. And this is a streaming app that we have for movies and documentaries. Opening an app is pretty easy. You also may want to know how to close an app. So maybe you have a lot of apps running and it's using your battery. There is a quick way to close your apps. So you'll notice as I click on Libby and it's open, but then I hit the home button, it just goes back to the home screen, right? That app is still running in the background. So even though you are not seeing Libby anymore, it's still running in the background and it may be using battery. Especially with stuff like games or things that are streaming, they might be using up some battery and you may want to close them. So how do we close those? We're going to use what's called the task manager. So the task manager will let you close apps or also go in between apps. So maybe you have like 4 or 5 apps open and you want to jump between them. Let me show you how to do that. Let me move my light a little bit so you can see my home button. Hopefully. You can't really see it on this one. But what I'm going to do, I have an iPad with a home button, and all I'm going to do is double tap on my home button. So tap, tap. And now it's got all the apps that I have running in the background on one screen. If I want to close out of apps, all I have to do is swipe up, and it's going to close the apps out. So now I don't have any apps running in the background. And let me check on that again. I'm going to double tap. And now you'll notice nothing happens when I double tap because I don't have any apps open. So let me open up some apps again and let's jump through them. I'm just opening them up really quick and then pressing the home button. Okay, double tap on my home button, tap, tap. And there's all the apps that I have open. And this is kind of useful if you're in an app. Say I'm in Libby and I wanted to check on if I had something in Canopy. I can just double tap my home button and jump right into Canopy. I don't have to hit the home button, search for Canopy, and then open it. I can just double tap if I know it's already open. So again, if I'm in Libby, I can double tap. Maybe I wanted to check something on Hoopla. I could do that if I knew Hoopla was already open in the background. Now, the interesting thing is some things don't have a home button anymore. So how do we close out of stuff without a home button? Let's do it on my iPhone. Again, I have an iPhone 11, so it's not going to have a home button. You'll notice at the bottom, there's a little white bar. It may be a little hard to see on this screen, but let me open up my iPhone. Come on. Okay, it's got my face. Now you'll notice my dock here at the bottom. Let me make this a little less bright. Okay, so at the bottom, I have my dock, and then as I swipe through, I have my 2 screens, but I don't have a home button. So how do I exit out of those apps? For devices without a home button, you're just going to slowly swipe up from the bottom until you see a bunch of different apps pull up. So these are all the apps that I have open in the background. So let me do that again. I'm just going to slowly swipe up. Well, it takes some practice, and then I let go. Let me do it again. Slowly swipe up and then let go. A lot of stuff with iPhones and iPads is all about those gestures, so it definitely helps to practice. And then here I can switch between apps or I can close them out. I'm just going to swipe up to close out. And that will close all of those apps that I had open. So that's useful if you have a device that doesn't have a home button. I know a lot of the newer models do not have that button on it anymore. And again, it's really helpful to jump in between those apps.
Hi, Rebecca. I think someone wants a repeat of that demo. They asked, how did you do that on iPhone?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so let me open up a bunch of apps again. And let's see, I'm going to open up Libby. And let's open up Hoopla also. Okay. So I am just swiping right from the bottom, right near the edge of my, let me see if I can kind of show that light there. So you see the edge of my phone there? I'm just swiping up from the bottom edge until I see those apps come up, and then I'm letting go. Swipe up, let go. It's kind of like you're dragging your finger there until those apps pop up, and then I let go of my screen, and then I can close out of those apps by swiping up. It does take some practice, so I recommend practicing. Let me show that again. And this might also apply to iPads as well. There are some iPads out there that don't have a home screen or a home button, I'm sorry. So again, you're just going to swipe slowly, and then you see those apps that pop up. Now, if I don't want to close out of those, I can always tap on a space that's not the app, and it will go back home. And then I'll still have those apps open. Now, if I'm in an app and I want to get out of an app, you'll notice for Libby down at the bottom, there's that white bar. I just swipe up. That's basically swiping up is my pressing the home button. Because if I'm on an iPad and I press the home button, it's going to take me back to my home screen, right? But if I don't have that home button, I just swipe up. Now it's not really a fast swipe. So let me get back into Libby. It's kind of just, I'm putting my hand on that white bar and kind of just swiping up. And now I'm back home. It does take some practice though. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, they say yes.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me get the iPad back and I will show how to move an app. I know we talked about moving an app when we had the dock. We talked about the dock. So again, the cool thing about iPhones is that they're super customizable in the way that the apps sit on your phone. So you don't have to have them where they are. You can move them at any time. So to move an app, all you do is you tap and hold on an app and then just move it to wherever you want. So let me demonstrate that. We're going to move Libby. Let's move Libby onto the other screen just so I can show you how to do that. Let me make this a little brighter. I'm going to tap and hold. And now two things happen there. So did you notice for a second that that little menu came up? Now that menu, you can either let go and then go through that menu, or I can just keep holding until the apps start to shake. So you can kind of see all my apps are kind of shaking, they're jiggling, and they have a little X in the corner. So this is an indication to me that I can either move the apps or I can delete them. So let's move them first. We'll talk about deleting in a second. But if I tap them and hold and move while they're jiggling, then I can move them wherever I want. So you'll see the apps kind of start to move. And then if I let go, then that app is now there. And it does take some practice. Let me move it back to the other screen. So to move between screens, you kind of just hover it near the edge there as they, oops, that's a whole new screen. I don't want it on a third screen. There we go. So I am just tapping and holding and moving. I'm holding down the entire time. And I'm just kind of moving it where I want to and then letting go when it looks good to me. And then I hit done up here in the top right corner if I'm done. Now, again, with that menu that popped up, there is an option to see here where it says edit home screen. If I tap on that, then it's going to get me back to the jiggling apps where then I can move my apps around. I can also move apps to my dock. So let's put my Photos app down in the docks because I access that app pretty often. I want to have it readily available. So let me tap and hold. I'm just going to wait until they jiggle. And now I'm going to move this down in my dock down here. And I'm going to let go. So now that's down here, I can always switch their positions as well. Maybe I want the phone or the photo next to my camera phone. And then when I'm done, I just hit done. Now, if you don't click done after a certain amount of time, they will stop jiggling on their own. But I usually like to hit done just so I don't accidentally move something that I don't want to move. And again, it does take practice. So if you're moving them and you're not finding they're going where you want, just keep trying. It does take a little bit of practice. I'm going to put Libby back. I'm going to put Libby on the dock too. Right down there. I'm going to hit done. And there is also a way to create a folder. So you'll notice there are some little squares here that have, for instance, photo and video and office. These are folders that we've created that have more than one app inside. So if I were to tap on that, let's tap on it. Now I have a bunch of other apps that I can access here that I've put inside of this folder. So how do we do that? How do we create a folder? It's pretty similar to moving an app. Let me move Libby back off because I want to create a folder with all of my library apps in there. Edit home screen. Okay, so I want to create a folder that has Canopy, RB Digital, Champaign Public Library, and Libby and Hoopla inside of it. So to do that, you basically move one app over right directly on top of another app, and it will create a folder for you. Let me show that again. I'm just tapping and holding and moving into that folder. And up at the top, you'll notice it says books. So iPhone and iPad will populate what they think that this folder might be based on the apps that are inside of it. So they put books because I was putting apps that have to do with books in there, right? But you can always change that. Let me show you again. I just click that little X right here on the corner, and it's going to let me type in whatever I want to call that folder. So I want to call it library apps. And then when I'm done, I just hit done. And now that's the name of my folder. Let me put a couple more apps in there. And this does take practice as well. And you'll notice on the bottom of my folder, there's two dots, kind of like our home screen. There is a way that you can make these into more than one screen as well. Now, I should say that if you have a folder that has a lot of apps in it, sometimes it's hard to navigate because there's just so many in there. So keep that in mind as well. The folder is nice to group stuff together, but for me, I like to have stuff that's productive and useful. And if I have just a folder full of junk and it's crowded, that's not really useful to me. But, you know, it's your iPhone, it's your iPad, you can do whatever you'd like. Just keep that in mind that if you have a lot of stuff in one folder, it might tend to be a little crowded. But that is a good way to kind of group stuff together and get stuff off of your home screen if you don't want to look at it all the time.
Someone's asking, once an app is open, does it go to the dock?
So some do. So for our iPad, you'll notice these three at the bottom right, and it's got a little divider line. And then I have these four at the left that I've kind of created myself. So to the right of the divider line are apps that I've opened recently. So these are ever changing because I'm opening different apps, right? So let me open another app and see what our dock looks like. So now you'll notice that my podcasts app went onto there because these three here are recently opened. Now you can change that as well. I think if I go into my settings and I go to, let's see, is there a way to change display? I think it may be, I'd have to look that one up, but here we go, home screen and dock. So down here, it says show suggested and recent apps in dock. So if I don't want to see my recent apps, I can click that off, and then I'll just have the apps that I put on there myself. Sometimes it's helpful to have those apps there. If you're doing a lot of stuff, you may want to see stuff you have opened recently. It just depends on what you like to do. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, they say yes. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I recommend kind of playing around with moving apps. Let's talk about how to delete an app as well, because there is a way to delete an app. So let's delete RB Digital. We recently had our magazine switch over to Libby. We no longer use RB Digital anymore. So that's transferred to Libby. So let me delete RB Digital. I'm gonna tap and hold on RB Digital. And then I have the options here. I can edit home screen, which will allow me to move it, or I can just hit delete app. And that will let me delete it from my iPad. Now, if I don't want to, I'm going to hit cancel. I can also do that from the point where my apps are jiggling. So you'll notice up in the top left of the app, there's a little X. If I tap on that, then it will also let me delete it from there. Then I can hit delete, and now it's off of my iPhone. Or I'm sorry, my iPad. And that's the same with iPhones. Let me show my iPhone. Let me get into it here. So I have my dock down here. It looks slightly different because it doesn't have those recently used apps on it. I just have 4 apps on my dock, but you can add more. Maybe I wanted to add my AccuWeather app down there. I think it only lets me do 4 actually. I can take one off of it though. I can take my podcast app off there, or I can move it back on. And again, I have a lot of folders. I like to have a folder on my iPhone that's most used. So maybe I don't want some of the apps on my home screen, but I want them in a folder that I use most often. So for instance, I have a Schnucks app in here. I have my Amazon app, Facebook, stuff that I use pretty often. And that's the cool thing about folders is they're super customizable. You don't have to do it a certain way. It's kind of your way or the highway with iPhones and iPads. Let me make this a little darker. And you'll see I have a books folder here because I work at the library. I got to have a books folder, right? I got my Libby app in there, Kindle, my Champaign Public Library app. Let me also show you how to install an app because that's pretty useful. Maybe you want to get more apps on your device. Let me get the iPad. Unless anybody has any other questions about moving or deleting.
No questions right now.
Okay, so installing apps. How do we put an app onto my device? So for iPhones and iPads, there is an app called the App Store. So that's where I'm going to go if I want to install an app. So I just tapped on App Store, and then I can kind of browse and see what they have. Maybe I want to browse the games. Maybe I want to get into the different categories of apps. Let's see if it'll load. There we go. So these menus down at the bottom are kind of a good way to browse apps, but there is also a way to search for an app. So let's do a search. I'm going to tap on the search. The little magnifying glass is kind of a good indication that you can search. So if I click on that, then up at the top, I can make a search up here. So I recently visited my parents and they have a little forest out in their front yard with a bunch of birds and squirrels and stuff. But I was interested because they have a woodpecker visiting them. And I wanted to know what kind of woodpecker it was. So I wanted to get a bird identification app. Bird identification. I'm going to tap on that. And then here I can browse all the identification apps. Now, if I wanted to download the app to my device, all I have to do is tap on where it says Get. Now, you'll notice this one says in-app purchases. It's a little hard to see. It's kind of small. Let's see if I can lower that. It says in-app purchases right underneath. Let me see if I can bring it up. That's a little better. Autofocus. So in-app purchases means that to get the app is free, but you might have to purchase something after you get the app to make it work fully or to get some of the extra features. If it's a totally free app, it'll usually just say get. For me, I have this one already in the cloud, but I have it deleted off my device. So it's showing me that I have it in the cloud. If I tap on that, then it's going to download the app back onto my device. Once you have it, you'll click open. You also may see as you're scrolling through, it may say open. That means you already have it on your device. And if I click open, then it's got the app open. I won't go into it too much, but once you have it downloaded, it will live on your device. So I got this Merlin bird ID. And again, I can always move that, but usually it comes in the very last slot on your home screen where it's open. So that's where the app goes. Now, sometimes apps also cost money. So let me see if I can find one. Here we go. For instance, this one is $14.99. It will tell you upfront how much it costs. But again, keep in mind that you may have to purchase something when you get the app if you want extra features or something to run. You can also tap on the app's picture and it will take you to more information about the app. It will have information about it, pictures, reviews, more information about the privacy, who developed the app. So this one's developed by Cornell, so you know it's a little bit more reputable than some other apps. And then there's just some other apps that you may like that are sprinkled in there as well. So that's kind of the quick way to get an app on your device.
We do have a couple of questions.
Sure thing.
Actually, I'm going to start with the most recent first. We have 3 questions. Sorry, someone said, sorry, how did you do that? Where did you find the info?
Oh, okay. So after I did my search, I just tapped on the picture of the app. You can also tap on the text, and that will take you to the screen where you can learn more about the app. You can also do it like if you're browsing, say you're on like the app page and you're just browsing like this. If you tap on the app's picture, again, it will bring you to where you can see more information about it. And then of course I could always get the app right there if I wanted to, or I could go back and keep looking.
Okay, they say thank you. And we have a couple more. So often it says that this app is not supported anymore. Should we delete it to make space?
It's up to you. Sometimes apps are old and they age out of the operating system. Usually with apps, you want to get the most recent version because that will protect you against any bugs that may be in the app, any glitches that might happen, any security issues. The most recent version is going to protect you from that kind of stuff. Now, it's not perfect, of course, but anything like that, I think might mean that it just may not be compatible with the operating system on your device. So some may be just like an older app that may have a newer version, or it's just not supported because it's not compatible with the way that the phone or the iPad currently works, if that makes sense.
And their second question is, how do we know if an app is useful?
That's a good question. I mean, that's kind of up to you. Usually I will, for me, if I'm looking at an app, I like to look at a couple things. Let me go back to that bird ID. I like to look and see how many ratings there are. This one has 30,000 ratings and it's a 4.8. So to me, that tells me that a lot of people have downloaded it, right? And a lot of people have used it and they said they had a good experience. It's also developed by Cornell. So for me, they're reputable. It's a university that's more trustworthy than some random developer that I maybe have never heard of before. I also like to look at the ratings and reviews just to kind of get an idea of what people are experiencing when they use an app. Is it useful to them? Do they think it works right? And then sometimes I even download the app and use it for a while and see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'll delete it off of there. With Apple's App Store specifically, they do kind of vet the apps before they get to the App Store. Apple is like that. They want to make sure that if something goes on their device, that it's good.
And they also ask, how do I know what version it is?
So I think if you tap on an app, it should tell you what version, if you're downloading an app. So this one is version 1.8.4. But if you're not sure what version you have on your phone, I think if you go into your App Store, let me go here. let's see. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm on my app store and I'm clicking my little profile guy up here in the right corner. And then this is where I can update apps and get more information. So if I am in where my updates are, it should tell me what version. Let's see, Photoshop. I don't know. This one, okay, so this one is version 21.21.0. And then I can also look at the version history. I don't know if there's a way to tell what version you currently have besides, okay, so this one, I think that's that version of Facebook. Yeah. And then if I were to update, then it would update that app to the newest version that the App Store put out. So I definitely recommend going through your updates and updating all of your apps. That's going to keep you free of viruses. That's going to keep you free of any security threat that might exist. Keeping stuff up to date is one of the things I recommend most often to protect yourself from that kind of stuff, especially with your operating system as well. You want to make sure you're updating your operating system, and you can do that in your settings. If I go into settings and I go to general, and then I go to software update, then it's going to check for any update I might have. So it looks like I do need to update my iPad, and I could do that right from this screen. And I could tell what version I'm at if I go back to the general screen and I click about. Then I can tell that, okay, that's my operating system currently is 14.4.1. And I'm on an iPad Pro. I hope that helps answer your question.
Yes, they said thank you. That was very informative.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think I've covered everything to do with deleting, installing, moving apps, unless anybody has a question, or I can show something again.
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay, let's talk about some of the new stuff that's come out with the newest version of the iOS, which is 14. Let me open up my phone here. Sorry, I'm just moving something on my phone so that you can see what I'm looking at. I'll do that later. Okay. So with iOS 14, the newest version, there are a couple of new things. So there's something called the app library. Let me get onto my phone and show you what the app library is. So if I'm on my home screen on my phone, let me turn that down a little bit. So I've got my home screen on my phone, and the app library is something that you can use to search on your phone for apps. So how do I get to my app library? I'm going to swipe left until I can't swipe anymore. And now I've got my app library. So let me go back home and show you that again. Swipe left, and I've got my app library. Now you may have to swipe more depending on how many home screens you have, or you might swipe less depending on maybe you have less home screens than I do. I only have 2. I don't like to have too many because that's annoying to me to have to flip through a million pages. But the app library is really cool because it kind of gives you some suggestions that Apple thinks you might want to jump into. So Apple's like, okay, you've used these apps a lot. Maybe you want to jump into those again. They also group apps. So for instance, I have a social group here. I have utilities. I have productivity and finance, entertainment, travel apps. And these groups are decided by Apple. So they've kind of used some of the stuff that they think you might like or that you use often and kind of group them together so that you can access them easily. You can also search. I really like the search portion of the app library. It really helps me, especially if I am digging through my phone for something and I want to get onto a certain app. The other weekend, I went up to the Art Institute and they had a lot of stuff that you could do on the Art Institute app. And I was like, oh man, I know I have that app on my phone. I just can't find it. I went to the app library and I did a little search. if I tap on that search, it will pull up all of the apps I have alphabetically, where then I can scroll through and search alphabetically, or I could just search right here. So if I tap and then I could search, I wanted to find the Art Institute. So right there, as I'm starting to type, it's starting to limit my search, Art Institute. And then all I have to do is tap on it and it opened. So that's super, super useful. If you're looking for something quick, I really recommend using the app library. I really like it because you can also delete apps off of your home screen, but keep them on your phone. So it kind of hides them from view without actually deleting them from your phone. So let me show that. Let me delete an app. I'm going to delete this parking app from Chicago. I don't need it anymore. I'm not parking up there right now. So if I click remove app, so you'll notice it doesn't say delete, it says remove. If I click remove, it's going to ask me if do I want to delete the app. Deleting the app would mean it's permanently gone. Or I can click where it says remove from home screen. So that would just take it off my home screen, but it would still be there and I could still search for it from the app library. So let me remove it from my home screen. Now it's gone. But if I go to my app library and I'm looking for it, Park Chicago, it's still there. So that's kind of a cool way to hide some apps that you may not want to have taking up space on your home screen, or maybe you just don't want to look at it anymore. You could do that. I recommend kind of playing around. You can also kind of tap on these, I think, as well. And you can delete them off of here or move them around if you want. Any questions?
Yeah, someone's asking, so you have a folder that is the app library. Where is the app library?
So the app library, again, it's just, you're going to swipe left until you see it. I should say that right now it's only available for iPhones. It's not available for iPads quite yet. I'm not sure if that's a developmental thing and they haven't figured it out how to do it on iPad, but right now it's only available on iPhones. Sorry, I should have said that from the beginning.
Thanks. Yeah, they said got it. Thank you, Rebecca.
You got it. Yeah, I really enjoy that one. I've been using it recently with stuff that I'm like too lazy to try to go into my 18 different folders on my phone. It's really helpful. Let's also talk about something else, unless anybody has any more questions about the app library.
I don't see any questions.
Okay, let me switch over to my iPad. So again, iPad, it's not going to have the app library, but you can search on an iPad. Let me show you how to do that. If I just kind of drag my finger from the middle and drag down, I'm going to have the option to do a search up here. And this is the same for iPhone as well. You don't have to use the app library to search. You can do that same thing. Tap and drag from the middle of your screen. And then I could search. Say I'm searching for my podcast app. And it's not only going to search the podcast app, it's also going to search other things. So it's going to search websites that Siri suggests. It's going to search dictionary. It's going to search a whole bunch of stuff for whatever my search is up here. But I can jump right into podcasts from there if I want to as well. So there is a way to search on there, even though we don't have that app library. Let's also talk about something called widgets. So widgets are available on both iPhone and iPad, and they're a quick way to get into some or see some of the stuff that's on your apps without opening it. So if I am on my iPad and I kind of swipe to the left, just slowly, you'll kind of notice those little things on the side creep in. These are widgets. So widgets are like, for instance, I have my weather app. These are just a quick way where I can get a glance of, okay, I have my weather there, or I have my date here. Maybe I have some events listed that I could kind of flip through. I also have a news widget. It looks like I have a maps widget. I think there's a calendar. Yep, calendar here. And you can always take these off or add more on. So how do we do that? So if you're on an iPad, you would just swipe so that you could see those. And I'm just tapping and holding and moving my finger to the right so that those widgets show up. And then I can go kind of scroll down here. There is an edit button right at the bottom. If I click edit, now I'm getting all my widgets shaking. So if I tap right up here in the top left corner, that plus button, let me tap on that. Then I have the option to add widgets. So I can add a clock widget. I can add a widget for my music, podcasts. Siri has a widget. These are different suggestions for widgets. Now you don't have to. You can always add them and take them off later. I'm going to put a podcast widget on there. So once I tap the widget, it's going to give me the option of what I want it to look like. So do I want it to be a super small widget like this weather one? Do I want it to be a bigger widget where I can get more information? That's up to you. You can decide. So I'm going to do this one because I like the medium-sized one. And I'm going to do add widget. And now it's got it right here at the bottom. And it's kind of cool because you can move them just like apps. So I can move them up. It's kind of takes some practice like with moving apps. And I can delete widgets if I hit that little minus button. That will let me take the widget off. I'm going to remove that. So maybe I don't want some of these, I can take them off and kind of clear up my widgets. And I can, let's see, I think if I hit done, then it will save that the way I am. And then I can also jump into the app if I tap on the widget. And if I tap on it, long press, I can edit the widget, delete the widget. Let me do that again because that went kind of quick. So edit widget, edit home screen, or I can take it off. So I like the widget because it's just a quick way of looking at something. Let me get my phone. So for me, I have my weather widget up here. I really like that on there because then I don't have to get into my weather app to see what the weather is like. I can just turn my phone on and it's right there. I got 74 degrees today in Champaign. The cool thing also about widgets is you can stack them. So I have a widget up here in the corner, but it's stacked on top of a couple other widgets. So if I swipe up, let's see if it'll work. I've got my podcast widget. I also have a clock widget because I'm kind of a nerd about world times. I like to see what time it is in Tokyo and London. And yeah, I have 3 widgets there. And I think you can add another one. I think you can get up to 4 or 5 stacked on each other. So that's kind of cool. I recommend checking out widgets, and you can get that on both iPhone and iPad. And with iPad, it's not going to be on your regular home screen, but for iPhone, it is on my home screen. It's not off to the side. Any questions about any new iOS 14 updates?
Don't see any questions right now.
Okay, let me switch back to the PowerPoint unless anybody wants me to show anything over again or they have any specific questions. I'll switch back to the PowerPoint because I do have some links that I want to share with everybody. And I'm happy to you know, show anything over if you have a specific question that you want me to cover as well. I know sometimes people come to class with a like specific goal in mind for it.
No questions at the moment.
Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to put my PowerPoint back on. Let me get back to the, and I will, we will send this out as well. So don't feel like you have to write down all of these links here. I hope you're seeing my, my PowerPoint there with all the links on it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, yep, I got widgets. So I really recommend if you're looking for additional resources for help with your phone or your iPad to check out Apple's support page. A lot of the stuff that I source for this class and for the any Apple class we hold is through the Apple support page, just because it's amazing. They have step-by-step guides, they have user guides, they have pictures, videos. It's like super easy to get into different stuff and check out how to do stuff. So I've included the links to iPhone user guide, iPad user guide, stuff about how to use gestures with Face ID, information on iOS 14, and then about more information about widgets in case anybody wants to learn those, because they are a little more complicated. But yeah, I recommend going on to Apple's support page, and let me pull that support page up as well, because I just can't say enough about how amazing that website is. Can you see I might have to share my screen again.
Yeah, I only see your PowerPoint.
Let me stop my share. Let me switch my video to me. Yay, okay. And then let me switch share screen. Here we go. Okay, I hope you're seeing the Apple support page.
Yes, we can see it now.
So it's at support.apple.com, or if you're just at Apple's regular page, apple.com. Let me get back up to the top. And it's this top here where it says support up at the right-hand side. If you click on that, that will jump you to their support page. And you can search support. So if you have a specific question you're searching for, but you can also browse some of the stuff down here. So maybe you had a question about your iPad, you can click iPad, and then you can kind of browse through some of the stuff. So you can learn more about multitasking. You can learn more about some like Magic Keyboard. I know some of the accessories that come with it are interesting to learn about. And then you'll also notice down here it says iPad user guide. So if I click on that, that will actually kind of give me a little user guide that I can browse through. Maybe I wanted to learn more about Siri. Then I could click and jump into Siri, more information about asking Siri. So the user guides are super useful. I use them all the time if I have a question or if I get a new device, they're super helpful. And you can switch between the different versions. If you have an older version, you can switch between that as well. And they have one for iPhone as well. So if I go to iPhone and I go down, let's see. Here we go, iPhone user guide. And then I can go into my table of contents, what's new with iOS 14. And then again, I can switch between the versions and learn a little bit more about what's new or stuff that I may not know about my iPhone or my iPad. The user guides are also really great for just kind of figuring out you might not know what your phone or your iPad could do. There is just so much out there to remember. It's just almost impossible to. So the user guide might give you some tips that you may use into the future, or, you know, help you access something you may not know that you had access to. Okay, let me jump back into the PowerPoint. I don't think I have anything else, but let me go ahead and get in there. I have the upcoming tech workshops listed here. We have next week, we're talking about Android phones and tablets. So if you know anybody or you're interested in learning more about an Android phone, we have that coming up next week. We also have getting to know Kindles. And then at the end of the month, we're going to talk about some of our e-library stuff. So I touched on Libby today a little bit, but we're going to talk more about Libby with ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. And then with movies, music, and more, we're going to cover Hoopla and Canopy. So if you want to know about those, you can always sign up on our website, or, you know, you can always give us a call and we can sign you up. And then let me put up my contact info as well. So if you want to reach out at any time, please do. I'm more than happy to help. I have my email, my phone, or you can always reach me if you call the information desk and they can direct you to me as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was great. We do have another question here. Not a direct question, but how do I unsubscribe from mail, maybe email, on the phone instead of doing it on the computer?
I think you can go directly into a message. Let me see if I have a message on here. Let me look at my phone real quick and see.
Yeah, usually whether you're on a computer or on a device, it's usually at the bottom of it depends on the email, but usually at the bottom of an email that you receive, you can
Yeah, I have one
unsubscribe.
actually. Let me show you on my phone.
Perfect.
We're gonna switch my video. Oop, that's fine. Okay. Start video.
They're
Okay.
saying, yeah, some emails don't show that option, but let's see if you can find one that's not.
So I got
easy.
one from Chewy. I get a lot of emails from Chewy. I bought like a cat tree once and they send me a million emails. And if I scroll down to the bottom of the email, like Jordan was saying, there is usually a link there that says something like unsubscribe. So here we go, right at the bottom. It's kind of hard to see. Let me kind of blow it up a little bigger. It says click here to unsubscribe. So let's see what happens. So then it jumps me out to another page where then I can decide yes or no. So yeah, I would open up the email and check at the bottom. And if it doesn't say there's a way to unsubscribe, you can always send those emails to your junk folder. And then I think usually emails are smart enough that they start seeing that you don't want to see those anymore and they'll move them right to your junk folder. That's my experience, at least. I hope that helps answer your question.
Yes, they say thanks. Yeah, and there's all types of, I think, services and apps, but I won't go into that at the moment. But yeah, sometimes it's there. It's just so hidden. Like I know sometimes I've
really
had
is.
to really dig deep to find it because sometimes even the coloring it's very light, so you can't
sometimes
notice it right
they
away.
have it like blend in with that gray text at the bottom. Sometimes you actually have to really read it. They try to get you.
Yeah.
They try to get you sticking around.
All right. Well, I don't see any further questions. Once again, Rebecca, that was wonderful. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat, or you could raise hand and you could speak. Rebecca's already mentioned the upcoming tech webinar. So the next one is getting to know Android phones and tablets, which will be Tuesday, June 8th at 2 p.m. And I think that's all we have. Let's see.
Yeah, and if anybody has a question after the webinar, feel free to reach out. I love iPhones and I love iPads, and I'm more than happy to help answer questions.
Yes. All right. Well, I don't see any further questions. So if that's okay with you, Rebecca, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a lovely afternoon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.